I want to talk a little bit about these wildfires on the West Coast in Washington State, Oregon, and California. And they're just totally out of control, okay? And when you start looking at this, okay, what's going on here? Well, you've heard me talk about this before. The carbon dioxide rises in the air, okay? And I don't believe it's due to the fossil fuels, okay? I believe it's due to the carbon dioxide not being consumed properly by plants, okay? Now, what happens here is this. When there's carbon dioxide in the air, this is the food for plants, whether it's an oak tree or algae. Well, when you're in the West Coast, Washington State, Oregon, and California, the biggest plant sources for these three states is in the coastal algae and plankton and that kind of stuff, right? Well, algae and plankton require 28 nutrients, 17 of which are minerals, to convert carbon dioxide into oxygen, which it pumps out into the atmosphere, which we can use. We love the oxygen. So they pump it into the water where fish can use it. So, okay. But they also take the carbon gas and turn it into, carbon chains like amino acids, things like carbohydrates, and also fiber, like stems and plants and things like that. Okay. Now, when the algae and the plankton and the kelp don't get their minerals to allow the biochemistry to take place, the carbon dioxide goes up. And that's what I believe is happening. Okay, I believe the carbon dioxide is going up because we've cut off the food supply to the ocean, okay, with hydroelectric dams. For instance, right now in California, there's 287 major hydroelectric dams in California. There's 1,400 water conservation dams. There's 1,300 water reservoirs, okay? And then you look at Washington State, there's 1,166 major hydroelectric plants. You didn't find out how many water reservoirs there were. And 70% of the electric power in Oregon comes from hydroelectric dams. I didn't get a figure of the number of dams exactly. I could only get 70% of the power comes from dams. And so this is the problem. They've cut off the food supply to the coastal and lake algae and plankton and kelp. Okay, so they cannot do their job. Now, this has happened millions of years ago, okay, before there were cars and fossil fuels and all that kind of stuff. Okay, we know that from examining amber, okay, from millions of years ago. The carbon dioxide would spike, and 6,000 years later, it would go down again. Well, that's because for 6,000 years, there weren't any volcanic eruptions in those areas, so there was no silt, there was no volcanic ash to feed the algae, okay, to consume the carbon dioxide. And I believe this is what's happening. This is why we have these coastal, West Coast fires. It just, it's kind of like in Borneo and Australia, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years ago, when they had the same sort of thing. I'm actually writing a paper called Sky Fire, because carbon is fuel, whether it's wood or coal or carbon dioxide in the air. And the firemen, even here in California and Oregon and Washington State, they'll put the fire out and they're packing up all their equipment and everything back into their trucks and just about get ready to drive off, and boom, the fire pops up again. Okay? And that's because there's still all this fuel there, and one little spark will set all the fuel off. We get 11,000 lightning strikes in 72 hours, all because of all this carbon in the air. Okay? So I want you to think of that. Okay. Now, I'm going to kind of switch a little bit here. Okay, we're going to switch a little bit because, of course, there's all kinds of stuff happening, bad stuff when it comes to health and disease stuff. Okay, and so I want you to get the book, It's All in Your Head. Okay, there's 25 different diseases that you can deal with. It's all in your head. And I got calls, 25 to 50 calls a day on these things, okay? So that's why we wrote the book, It's All in Your Head, okay? And we're talking about everything from Bell's palsy, trigeminal neuralgia, you lose your sense of smell. You feel like there's something in your throat and you can't swallow properly. That's the ninth cranial nerve being squeezed. And then you know my story of Elijah Cummings, how the medical doctors in Johns Hopkins Medical School killed him with ablation when he had AFib. He should have just gotten our program and gotten off all the bad foods so he could absorb nutrients, and Elijah Cummings would still be alive today. Okay? And so that's why I came up with the DVD and now the CD. We got the CD also now available of Is Your Doctor Killing You? Because Johns Hopkins, they started out in 2013 and through 2020, and they looked at the top 8 causes of death in American hospitals. They looked at the top 8 causes of death in American hospitals. Number 1 was heart disease. Now, they didn't say people got their heart disease, they got a heart attack, they came in, they died in the hospital. Okay, to half of them, a third of them, 10%, 90% die from complications of treatment in the hospital for heart disease.